I know some of you are disappointed to see me tonight. You thought this was going to be your speaker. For those who don't know, the Facebook post to advertise me coming this week was this picture. And I don't know if you see this. This isn't me. This is Lance, my uncle. And so I texted him, and I said, I'm really looking forward to hearing you Wednesday. And by the way, congratulations on becoming a youth minister. That's fantastic. His reply, he just sent back and said, congratulations on the kid. So, but I don't have a kid. I told him there's a better chance of me having a kid than a dog. I tell you that. So, but I'm glad to be here, and it's always an honor to come back. I think y'all's topic this summer is a lot of fun, talking about some lesser-known people, some lesser talked about people. And I've been given the topic Joseph of Arimathea, talking about this idea of sacrificial love. And I've been thinking about that today. What is sacrificial love? What is it? And so what I want to do for just a few minutes is I want to look at this guy Joseph in the burial account of Jesus, and I want to pull out three attributes of this guy that I think shows sacrificial love, and hopefully you can leave tonight applying something. I think that's what makes a lesson good, by the way, is when you can leave with something. And so that's our goal. So if you will, turn to Matthew chapter 27. That's where we're going to be for just a few minutes. Matthew 27. And I'm going to go ahead and while you're turning there, I'm just going to set the scene for you. Tell you what's going on. Jesus has just been crucified. They put Jesus on the cross at 9 a.m. in the morning. This would be the third hour of the day. As you know, he's going to be on the cross for 6 hours, and he's going to die at about 3 in the afternoon, which would be the 9th hour of the day. Now, this is important for you to know because 6 hours on the cross is actually extremely short amount of time for somebody to die from crucifixion. Crucifixion was created by the Persians, later perfected by the Romans. And the idea of crucifixion was a method of punishment to delay death so that the person suffering the crucifixion would experience the absolute max amount of torture. In fact, most people that were crucified would last many hours, maybe even days. And so for 6 hours, this was a short amount of time. In fact, it's so short that we know that Pilate was amazed that he died so quickly. That's our scene. That's where we're at. Matthew 27, I want to show you the verse. Go to 57. We're going to read 57 through 61. That'll be our passage. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who also was a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and he asked for the body of Jesus, and then Pilate ordered it to be given to him. And Joseph took the body and he wrapped it in a clean linen shroud, and he laid it in his own new tomb, which he had cut in the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the entrance of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there sitting opposite the tomb. Now this text, usually you don't hear a lot of sermons about it. I think that's the idea of tonight. You don't hear a lot of passages on this. You don't see a lot of people spend time memorizing this passage. But we read about this guy named Joseph, and this is the guy who buries Jesus. Now I will say we don't know a ton about him. But one thing we do know that's interesting is there is an Old Testament prophecy that includes him. And you know this prophecy. It's the Messianic prophecy. It's Isaiah 53, the one we go to often. Isaiah 53, verse 9. Listen to this. And they made his grave with the wicked and with a rich man in his death, although he had done no violence and there was no deceit in his mouth. I would imagine, if you're reading this verse, this would be very difficult to understand right until you arrive at the burial scene of Jesus and we see how God uses this guy named Joseph to fulfill this prediction. And it's important that you know that this tomb that he gives him, it's important because typically someone who was crucified, they would be thrown into a mass pit. That's how this usually went. That's how the Romans did it. Crucifixion was reserved for the worst criminals, although they're not going to crucify a Roman. But afterwards, what they would do is they would take those criminals and they would put them in the Valley of Hinnom. And if you know where this is at, it's that southern part of Jerusalem where back in Jeremiah's day, they would sacrifice children there. So that was one of the options. You'd go to the Valley of Hinnom, or They would throw you in a mass pit where dogs and birds and animals would pick at the flesh and they would be burned. That is your typical treatment for a crucified victim. But this prophecy said, though he would be assigned with the wicked, he would be buried with the rich. How could that happen? Look at verse 57. Matthew, we just read it. I'm going to read it one more time. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who also was a disciple of Jesus. Now, there's some noteworthy things just from this one verse. It's noteworthy because we could say a lot of things about Joseph by looking at the other accounts. For instance, Mark's account. Mark talks about how he was a prominent council member. That is, Joseph was one of those 70 ruling elders in the group known as the Sanhedrin. 71 if you include the high priest. In Luke's account, Luke calls him a good man and a just man. And though he is good, and though he is just, and though he is a council member, it's important that you know he's rich. So this is what I want to do for just a few minutes. I want to give you 3 notable features of this rich man who gave his own tomb for Jesus. And the first one is this. I don't know where I need to point this. I may have to use this. Yeah, here we go. I want you to see this first one. Joseph was genuine. Now, what I want to do also is I want to use some of you tonight. I've been thinking all week of who's genuine at this church. And there's so many. So I only just chose a few for tonight. But I want to show you someone who I think is genuine. I love this picture. Charlie Arnold. By the way, is this picture not the best picture ever? I think it's hilarious. This was on the mission trip, and I watched him play. I'm telling you right now, that bag went nowhere near the hole. It didn't. But we love Charlie. And one thing I know about him, he's genuine. You know, as an adult, when you go on these trips, it's easy to just kind of separate yourself and do other things, but Charlie's always with the kids. He's always doing something. He's always encouraging me, encouraging the kids. And when I'm thinking about him, I'm thinking, man, Charlie is genuine. I talked to him today, and it was just a genuine conversation. He listens. So now I want to show you how Joseph was genuine. Look at verse 57 again. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was also a disciple of Jesus. Here's the thing about Joseph. He is mentioned in all 4 accounts, and he's only mentioned in the burial account of Jesus. A common question that people ask, where is Arimathea? We don't know. Scholars don't know. Some believe he came from Ramah, that place where Samuel the prophet was born. We don't know. But we assume that he was born there, and then he moves to Jerusalem, where he becomes a member of the council. Here's the thing. Though he is an upper Jewish leader, Luke's account says he did not consent to their decision and to their deed. Because as you know, the council did not like Jesus. They didn't like him at all. These were the same people who made up all those false charges. So Joseph doesn't agree with this anymore. He doesn't agree with this. But what's noteworthy is it says he was a disciple of Jesus. So what does that mean? What does it mean to be a disciple of Jesus? Well, it means he's a real learner. It means he's believing in Jesus. It means that he followed Jesus. Not only was he a disciple, but in Mark's account, it says of him that he was waiting for the kingdom of God. In other words, he was waiting for the Messiah to come. And so here you have this prominent council member who is a disciple, but even though he's a disciple, we get another detail in John's account. It says he was a disciple of Jesus secretly. Why? Why would he be a secret disciple of Jesus? Well, for fear of the Jews. He was scared. He's scared of losing everything. The Sanhedrin had officially threatened to expel anyone from the synagogue who confessed Jesus' name. We read about this in John chapter 9. And so if he, a ruling council member, and they find out that he's trying to bury Jesus' body, a rival king, he's going to lose all connection from Judaism. So he's a believer in Jesus, but he's a secret believer in Jesus. For some reason, a lot of commentators, they like to give him a hard time for this. They really like to bash him. But here's something to consider. Where are the others? Where's John? Where's James? Where's Peter? At least, whatever fear that Joseph had, he's now going public. I want you to see that. This is where he's growing. He's growing in his faith. And something that I've learned about discipleship is it's not a light switch. I think about when I was baptized at 11. I'd like to think that I've matured a little from then. And I know that it wasn't just a light switch, that it just overnight happened. It was gradual. And I think that's what's happening here. He's growing in his faith. Whatever fear he did have, he musters up courage, and he asks for a proper burial for Jesus' body. That is a fact. Mark's account said he took courage and went to Pilate to ask for the body of Jesus. So I want you to see that this guy is making progress. They say that the definition of a friend is somebody who comes in when the rest of the world has gone out. Nobody shows up, but this guy does. Also, something to note, Pilate. Pilate hated the Sanhedrin. And especially if a Sanhedrin member is asking for the body of Jesus to go into this place where Pilate is. A Gentile ruler would make him unclean and defiled right before the Sabbath. But I want you to see this. He's willing to risk it all, even though he was a secret disciple. But here is the thing about being a secret disciple. You cannot stay a secret disciple for very long. There's a quote. I'm going to put it on the screen for you to see. I'm going to read a longer version. But this is what it says. Christianity is something which is meant to be seen. There can be no such thing as secret discipleship, for either the secrecy destroys the discipleship, or the discipleship destroys the secrecy. A man's Christianity should be perfectly visible to all men. And I want you to see, that is what is happening in this story. The discipleship is killing, destroying the secrecy. He's going public. And I'm going to talk to the teens in here. If you are a secret disciple, when you go to school, if people don't know who you are and what you're really about, you just kind of fit in. You're a secret disciple. And what needs to happen is the secrecy needs to be destroyed by the discipleship. Adults, it applies to us too. How are we at work? Do people know it? Do people know who we are? Do they know what we're about? Do they know the things that we put first? He was genuine. He's going public. Here's the next thing about him. He was gentle. By the way, I was thinking about someone gentle in here. We're not going to do this, but I guarantee if I said everybody on the count of 3 named the most gentle person in this room, we'd probably all say the same person. And we're not going to do that. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Randy McNabb. No surprise, right? Everyone knew it was coming. I always put him in my lessons, and I always will. He's gentle. Have you noticed that? He's kind. One of the games I like to play with them is when we're talking, I try to have the last word, the last encouraging thought. You never will win. Because this is who he is. He's gentle. He's a disciple. Disciples are to be gentle. I want you to look at verse 58. He went to Pilate, and he asked for the body of Jesus, and then Pilate ordered it to be given to him. And listen to these details. Joseph took the body, and he wrapped it in a clean linen shroud, and he laid it in his own new tomb, which he had cut in the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the entrance of the tomb and went away. Are you seeing the tenderness? Are you seeing the gentleness? Are you seeing the respect that he's given the Lord? The Jews in this time did not embalm their dead. They didn't cremate. They believed taking the whole body, anointing it with spices and with aloes, and to plant it in the ground like a seed of a statement of faith, belief, in a future resurrection. And something we're going to see here in a minute, a dead body is hard to manage by yourself, and someone's going to show up. You know who it is. It's Nicodemus. He's going to show up. John 19 tells us that. But I want you to see from this little passage here, he's genuine and he's gentle. He's genuine in the fact that he's going public. The secrecy is being killed by the discipleship. And now he's showing respect. He's showing respect for the Lord. You know who someone also I think about at this church? I think about Miss Ninette. Man, she's really gentle. And not only is she gentle, she's bold. And there's something to that. We are to be bold in our faith and gentle. And I was thinking about this. I was getting emotional thinking about this. I was thinking about as a kid, where would I be without Miss Ninette? Now, I had a great family. I had people who valued the Lord. But where would I be if I didn't come to church as a small kid and know the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament? Simple things. Where are the 4 Gospels? Where are the letters? And we say, well, that really doesn't matter. Yes, it does. It does matter. And I was thinking about that. I don't know where I'm going to be without people like this who are gentle. So we are to be bold, but we're also to be gentle. You can be both. You can have a gentle boldness about you. You can have a calm bravery about you. Jesus talks about this all the time. Matthew 11, he says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and I'm lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Paul, he writes to the Philippian church, let your gentleness be known to all men. So here's the formula. You be bold, but you be nice. You be nice to people. And some people think, well, I'm bold, so therefore if I'm bold, I don't have to be nice. We see this in the church happen all the time. If someone has different theology than us, oh, I'm going to go and correct them. Okay, but are you going to do it lovingly? A lot of times we don't. That just doesn't seem the correct way to go about it. Some people say, well, I just give it to you the way I see it. Okay, well, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should be more gentle. You know, some people say, well, when it comes to my brain, I say it. Well, maybe not. Maybe don't. We're to be gentle. We're supposed to be bold, but we're to be gentle. The fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Here's something that's interesting. The Greek word for gentleness and meekness are the same. And what it is praus. And what that word means is strength but under control. It is the choice to be restrained. 400 BC, there was this guy who wrote this book. And the book was called The Art of Horsemanship. And this is really interesting. He describes the selection for the Greek army for their war horses. And this is what they would do. They would go to the mountains and they would find the wildest horses. And they would take those horses and they would spend months and months training these horses, breaking them in. And after months of this process, what they would do is they would take the horses and put them into 4 different categories. The first category was just to be discarded. Maybe the horse doesn't pass any of the requirements, so we don't need it, we're going to release it back into the wild. That was the first category. The second category was used for simply bearing burdens. The third category was just for ordinary duty, just doing chores in everyday life, that kind of thing. But then there was a fourth category. And the fourth category was reserved for only some few choice horses, and that was to be a war horse. And if the horse passed all the necessary requirements, you know what they would call the horse? Praus. That is wildly powerful, but it has learned to bring its nature under the control of the person who is riding it. The horse can stand firm and cannon fire, but it can come to a stop with just a whisper of a voice. That's us. We're strong, we're bold, but we're gentle. Joseph was genuine. He goes public with his faith. The secrecy is being killed by the discipleship. Then we know he's gentle. He wants to respect our Lord Jesus by giving him his own tomb. And then lastly, we see he was generous. Now this one, there's so many people that came to my mind. I'm just going to show you 2. I can name 15. But here's someone that I think that was very, very generous. I think about someone like Dennis. In fact, I left my phone, but Rod just gave me a list of things that Dennis has done that he wrote. There was over 40 things he's done. And the things I remember is growing up when I was in high school, and we were doing a project here at the church, whether it was building a ramp or doing anything, Dennis always let us use his tools. Always. And his tools, by the way, are nice. They're really good. You know this about him. But not only that, he was always willing to let us take his truck. If we needed to go to New Mexico, like on a mission trip, he's like, take it. And not only that, I've never built a ramp without him. He was always there. Always being generous, not only with his giving, but with his time. I can name so many. I'm going to name one more. Jerry Austin. I can say this about Jerry Austin. I have never built a ramp without him, but he has probably built plenty of ramps without me. He is awesome, and he shows up, and he's just happy, and he's generous, and he gives his time. Be like Jerry. And then I thought about Jerry Bird, and then I played this game, and I was like, I got to stop because I'm going to miss somebody. There's so many, though. I want you to see that. But Joseph was generous, and I want you to see this. I'm going to read you verses 60 through 61, and then I'm going to read a different account of it. Matthew 27:60, as we get ready to close. laid it in his own new tomb, which he had cut in the rock, and he rolled a great stone to the entrance of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there, sitting opposite the tomb. Now, I just read you that, but I want you to listen to John's account, because John's account includes Nicodemus, okay? Here's what it says. After these things, Joseph of Arimathea, who was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly, for fear of the Jews, asked Pilate that he might take away the body of Jesus. And Pilate gave him permission, so he came and took away his body. Here's the detail. Nicodemus also, who earlier had come to Jesus by night, came bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds in weight. And so they took the body of Jesus and they bound it in linen clothes with the spices, as is the burial custom of the Jews. Myrrh is a liquid, aloes is a powder, and they would mix these together and they would anoint the body. But in this passage it says 75 pounds. That much? That's generous. The only time someone ever got that amount would have been if you are rich or you are royalty. So I want you to see this, and I'm going to include Nicodemus in this as well. The generosity of these two, to say that you can have my tomb, you can have my property, and Nicodemus to bring all that myrrh and aloe. It says this: the world may not give you the respect that you deserve, but we will treat you like the king that you are. Myrrh, if you remember going back, it's one of the gifts that the Magi brought him, Jesus. And it's like a prediction. The Magi, by giving baby Jesus myrrh as a gift, would be telling of the entire purpose of his birth, which is to die. That's why Jesus came, to die, and then to be raised up. So Nicodemus provides the spice, Joseph provides the grave, and they gave of their resources generously. As we close, I'm thinking about this idea of sacrificial love. What is it? It's this. It's being generous. It's being genuine. It's being gentle. We're careful how we talk to one another. We know we can hurt each other, so we got to be careful. And we give our time away. And there's no one that shows the example of sacrificial love better than Jesus himself, who died on a cross and was raised on the third day. Tonight, this is your chance. This is your chance to make things right. Maybe there is something going on in life and you just need to give it up. Maybe you just haven't been giving the sacrificial love to Jesus that you need to give. This is your time. Maybe if you need to be baptized and become a disciple of Jesus, no better chance than right now. If you have any need, we ask that you'd please come as we stand and as we sing.